Oh, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining. All our speakers are here, so it's great and amazing to see everyone join in. Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you so much, Inka. Thank you so much, Adenike, for joining us today. I am so excited about the section, and I believe that our participants will also gain a lot from this section. Without wasting a lot of our time, I'll go ahead to make a little introduction about renewable technologies, and then I will cordially invite our first speaker for today. So let me pull up my screen. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you so much. And if you're just joining now, you can introduce yourself in the chat box, say hi to everyone, tell us where you're joining in from. And myself, my name is Ibo Shalom Chilaru. I'm the founder of Renewable Technologies, and I'm joining currently from Florida, the United States. And just to give you a brief about Renewable Technologies and some things that we've been doing, Renewable Technologies was founded in 2022, and it was founded to promote climate change awareness and advocacy, and also to provide access to clean and affordable energy and equip young people with renewable energy designing skills for a sustainable energy transition. And our mission is to reach out to the undeserved and marginalized areas of Nigeria. And we think that the best way to achieve our goal is to organize renewable energy awareness campaigns, design literary programs, curriculums, and provide technologies to empower youth and students in local schools, communities, and people at the grassroots level. And currently, we have started a new initiative. So we are partnering solar installation training for women and girls for women, girls, and youth in the indigenous parts of River State, Nigeria. Earlier this month, March, we were able to do that for 50 girls in a rural community. And for this initiative, which is called Renew Education, it's a monthly education series designed to equip young energy leaders, young energy enthusiasts, and professionals with the right knowledge to explore future renewable energy careers. And we seek to prepare a competent workforce, resilient towards promoting the energy transition and fulfilling the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 4, 7, and 13. And this is just a little bit of the context of the webinar, but I'm not going to give it all away because a lot of presentation slides have been sent in. So you're going to be seeing that directly. You're going to be exploring all of that in some minutes. It's my pleasure to welcome our first speaker for the section today. And I will tell you a little bit about herself, and she's going to take it away to tell you more and introduce her section. Please permit me to share my screen.
Now I know that there's a lot of sick days, so
Just a little, but just for the little delay. Just pull up the screen. Okay, almost there. All set. Okay, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you Ms. Inka's Coma today. And I'll tell you, just like I said, I'll read her bio and she's going to take it all the way. Inka's Coma specializes in helping stakeholders practically think through their gender equality and social inclusion challenges and the opportunities to ensure they are responsive to change and well-positioned for business opportunities. Inka's career spans 15 years, and she has helped various entities deliver results on closing gender gaps in energy, in employment and skills, productive uses of energy, entrepreneurship, access to finance, gender-based violence, and community benefit sharing. She has built capacity and championed change with governments, private sector, donors, NGOs, and communities in sub-Saharan Africa, South America, East Asia, and the Pacific. She was the global lead of over $4 million World Bank Gender and Energy Program from 2018 to 2020 across over 80 countries, and simultaneously managed the Africa and Gender and Energy Program in an over $10 billion portfolio of generation, transmission, distribution, and off-grid investments. From 2016 to 2018, she was the Gender and Infrastructure Lead in the Gender Group. She's also an author. She's the author of various energy. She's the author of various energy infrastructure-focused publications, most recently, Gender Equality in the Off-Grid Solar Sector, Addressing Gender-Based Violence and Building Respectful Workplaces, Stepping Up Women's STEM Careers in Infrastructure, and an overview of promising approaches, gender equality in the geothermal energy sector, road to sustainability, mini-grids and gender equality, inclusive design, better development outcomes. So these are numerous books that she has written, and I am so excited to have her on the panel with us. Finally, Inka holds an MSc in Environmental Change and Management from the University of Oxford and a postgraduate degree from the University of Cape Town in Economics and Environmental Management. With a warm round of applause, please let's make welcome Ms. Inka for our presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that detailed intro. You have me blushing and squirming a bit, but nice to be with you all. I know we're a small circle, and I was just checking who's there. And yeah, thank you to Renewable Technology for having me. Also nice to be on the call with you, Hannah and Adenike. Yeah, all practitioners in this field. So I think there's going to be a lot of hopefully not too much overlap, but a lot of resonance in terms of the work we're doing and different perspectives. So I'm going to jump in. If we can pull up that presentation. I'm basically going to just talk about our topic for today, which I believe is gender and climate change. I'm going to come at this from the idea that curiosity is really core to picking a career, which may not be as apparent in the beginning as it may seem. And I'm going to go off video just because we're traveling. So yeah. Okay, perfect. So waiting 32 years for gender equality is not an option in my book. And that really has, if we can just go back, I'll mention when you can switch slides. Thank you. So, you know, you have these gender gaps, and what does curiosity and work have to do with it? Well, curiosity is a quality relative to inquisitive thinking. It's heavily associated with human development. So if we look at humans versus other animals or species, this is something that really sets us apart, and doesn't mean that we're better. It's just that we're really interested in learning and acquiring skills and knowledge, which I know from the chat a lot of you are doing at the moment. We know that curiosity got Pandora in trouble by opening of the box, and the release of kind of those forces onto the universe. So it's always something to balance, but I think it really is from infancy to adulthood, staying curious is really the most powerful thing you possess. And I ask you also in this webinar to really just think about curiosity in terms of the gender and climate change issues that we're going to talk about today. If we can move to the next slide. Oh, yeah, great. So just a little bit about my journey. I am from Cape Town, South Africa. I hope you can hear that from my accent. I went to a German school there. I studied science in my undergrad. I thought I was going to be measuring sea urchins and, sea creatures. But there was a lot of curiosity towards humans and how they live their lives. And I didn't know where that was going to go. I studied oceanography, economics, but then slowly found my way, through my master's in environment and climate change. And then many, many years later, only at the World Bank when I started there, to really get interested in the interface of infrastructure and climate change and gender equality. But it took a really, really long time. I have to say, up to the end of my late 20s to actually find the work I love and do on a day-to-day basis. I've also, in parallel, been studying psychology, and that is just on a personal level very, very nourishing. And the human condition, again, fascinates me. And I think, underpins also the thinking about power, about resources, about agency. So it's been a nice combination of facets, but when I was 18 or 20, I would never have known how this would add up. I left the World Bank during the height of the pandemic. I made a choice to come back to South Africa after 11 years of living in the UK, in the US, and Senegal, and Ethiopia, and New Zealand. Was very clear that I wanted to be near family, and so I moved my dog, who's from Ethiopia, back to Cape Town. You can see him there in the sunset, and have also moved my New Zealand husband here. So, this is the things that are beyond kind of this work and curiosity aspect, but are real considerations as one moves through one's career. And then of late, I founded a company called Distill Inclusion, and I'm working with various clients such as Deloitte, Bastel, USAID, and KPMG in that capacity. So if we can move to the next slide, and that's some injera in that picture there. So that's some good food in Addis. So the topic of today is gender and climate change, but ultimately my perspective has really come from this infrastructure lens and extreme poverty lens. That is defined as someone living on less than $1.9 per day. That's been going down for the last 25 years until 2020. So that's really set us back. Just in terms of the numbers, there's 736 million people in extreme poverty, and those are almost predominantly from India, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, and Bangladesh. So many of those on the African continent, and I'll speak to you about my company, but I'm particularly very interested in what's going on in the region, on the continent. I think, we need to take the gaze away from forces and really see what we've got and what challenges we need to tackle. And a key thing around the infrastructure is really energy, transport, water, sanitation, and looking at how we can let people live dignified lives. And if we can move to the next slide. So, the webinar intro already said that we've got all these sustainable development goals, which are, in my mind, a big miracle that, governments have come together to say, here are our priorities in terms of, climate action, gender equality, energy. We've got people without energy access, without access to clean cooking. But there's significant effort by various organizations represented here, really making a push on these. But we also need to realize that energy, and this is the climate change piece, is that energy really does contribute around 60% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So the energy sector, when you think about climate change, is such a big fundamental piece there. And we still have a lot more to go in terms of moving into, distributed renewables, wind. Right now, we've got a lot of focus on, hydropower is one of the largest single renewable energy electricity resources. But we're seeing a shift in Africa, and I'm sure others on this panel will speak to that. But it's just to say that these kind of targets and goals are fundamental, and there's been huge investments in the energy sector, about 1.85 trillion, but more is needed, particularly in the region and countries that in Africa and India, etc., because those have some of the largest access gaps. If we move to the next slide. Yeah, and this is just, a cool picture where the action happens. I had the pleasure of speaking on a gender and energy panel there a few years ago. And it's really impressive that we have these kind of, that we have the UN General Assembly and that we have these member states making decisions. And it's always a complicated and difficult process, but I think it's brilliant and shows that, we have collective goals and a moral compass. If we move to the next slide. So moving to the climate change piece of this, I think it's the biggest challenge of our time. So we're taking the challenges we've had with infrastructure and dignified lives and poverty. We're bringing in, our future objectives on the SDGs, and we know we're faltering on a lot of those, which is worrying, but also makes day-to-day life quite exciting in terms of actually doing something about that and pushing for governments to take responsibility. But we now have this additional aspect of climate risk, right? And when we hear climate risk, I like to break it down in terms of hazards, so the actual physical and ecological aspects. This would be a storm. We've got exposure. So if you're standing, for example, on a beach, you can imagine what your exposure is to a storm, and hopefully you can move away and be safe, but a lot of buildings and infrastructure might be in the way. And then you have vulnerability, right? And that actually goes back to that conversation on extreme poverty or socioeconomics and gender equality. And these three aspects add up to the risk. And we know that because of women's limited access to resources and their restricted rights and their muted voices, it's not their lack of contributions to aspects of climate change or infrastructure or care or other aspects, but we know that they have an increased vulnerability and exposure, and this influences their risk and impact in terms of the experience of climate change. So when you think about gender and climate change, break it down into these different aspects and think about how will a female farmer that's inherited, low-lying land or smaller plot sizes be affected when there's more rainfall or more flooding, right? The hazard is going to occur. That is kind of a very gender-neutral piece, but the exposure and the vulnerability, the exposure to the hazard is going to look different, and the vulnerability in terms of, financial resources or information is going to be different. So that's my main message there. If we move to the next slide. Great. So what are the gaps looking like more specifically? I'm going to touch on a few of these and not go over them. And I also want to preface that when, there are other social identities such as race, religion, citizenship, and sexual orientation, and gender identity and disability, and they often intersect to marginalize specific individuals. So the climate and gender discourse, I think it's still in the beginning stages of looking at some of these other social identities. And I'm going to be speaking about, women who, people who identify as women and people who identify as men. But these issues really also affect people who are gender fluid and gender non-conforming. So I just want to mention that, but the research and the data isn't quite as far as it needs to be on these issues and the recognition of these complexities by governments. I don't know if we can mute. So, for example, and this really makes me angry, at the UN Climate Summit, this is again where everyone meets and kind of makes consensus-based decisions on climate change, mitigation, adaptation. Oh, we can move to the previous slide. 60% of the panelists were men in 2021, and they spoke 74% of the time, right? This is very data-driven evidence. Then we know that women earn between 23 and 35% less than men in South Africa. So again, thinking about that vulnerability, thinking about the cash reserves that someone would have or the money that they would go into pension with, right? It reduces your resilience and your ability to adapt to climate impacts. So, you know, there is no single gender equal society. So all of our countries and everywhere we're from, there's still something to work on. You know, the Nordic countries have maybe gone the furthest along there, but I think there's a lot we can still do. But I am seeing really exciting and substantial change across Africa, and yeah, exciting things happening around women's entrepreneurship, for example. If we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this picture just brings home what I was saying before. I mean, we all can notice what's going on here at COP26 in November 2021. There's Angelica Merkel in the little corner there representing Germany as a head of state, but it's looking pretty dire. So women are not in decision-making rooms. And this is really shocking because we can see from evidence such as the Pew Research Center, they did a global survey on women's perceptions around climate change and men's perceptions. And across the countries where they surveyed, Germany, US, Sweden, Belgium, you know, Japan, these are, you know, I don't think they surveyed across Africa, but they found that women are more concerned than men about the harm of climate change. And we've seen that kind of intergenerational thinking and also the willingness to make changes to their lifestyle and to make changes in business practices. So we're really, through this lack of female leadership, missing out on, you know, driving mitigation targets and adaptation aspects as well. And it's just not right, actually. So yeah, this keeps me angry and active. We can move to the next slide. So I've already touched on why this matters, and there's a business case, although I have to say I am sometimes quite fatigued around the conversations on a business case. You know, what's the business case for more women's employment, or what's the business case for providing women with access to finance? I mean, in essence, it's the right thing to do. We're missing out on you know, women's potential and talent. We're not treating them fairly. So I think sometimes, you know, it's good to convince CEOs and to pitch in certain organizations, but I would also say that, you know, business cases is getting a bit tiring at times. That convincing is quite yeah, it should at this point be quite accepted that, you know, we should treat people fairly and equitably and harness the potential of all. There's also a risk management aspect. So, for example, in climate change, you know, early warning systems, you know, if you want to really look at reducing the risk, the climate risks, you have a risk management aspect there. If you're not engaging, you know, half the population around these issues, you are increasing your risk. You're not seeing different perspectives, and you're not seeing different movements of people. And often in my work, I do this from a mitigation and response perspective. So pre an event and post an event, right? So in a climate event, you don't have to just think about the hazard. You also have to think about, you know, rebuilding and reshaping people's livelihoods after, yeah, a flooding, for example. And if we move to the next slide. So Distill Inclusion, the company I founded and I'm the director of, you know, we're really looking at this challenge specifically. Our team is quite senior, and everyone has really been focusing on women's empowerment issues in public and private sector projects. I'm particularly very passionate about working with the public sector, utilities and ministries, state-owned enterprises, but there's always a lot of work with contractors, with companies, with think tanks and NGOs. And, you know, we really believe that, you know, gender expertise and climate expertise should be country-based. You know, we're pushing the envelope on bringing technical experts from the countries we work on to the, you know, project areas. So if we work in Nigeria, really making sure that we're harnessing a skill set there. And then also breaking down gender equality into actual topic areas, right? I am not a childcare specialist. So if we need to tackle the business case for childcare provision for the private sector, that needs to be done by a specialist. Or I have, female entrepreneurship experts on our team, or access to finance. And my work is particularly focused on women's employment and gender-based violence, which are universes in themselves. So moving away from this idea that, gender is, everyone can do it and it's a catch-all, but it's actual technical expertise, right? You'd have 20 or 30 different kinds of lawyers, and the same for gender equality. So we can move to the next slide. This is just if you want to check out the team, we have a website. I know this is also about career options, but these are just some of the experts on our team. There really are fantastic individuals that are leaders in their field. So, like I mentioned, financial inclusion experts or agricultural experts or deep social inclusion experts. So putting those teams together and working on some of these challenges that are part of the SDGs. We can move to the next slide. Great. So I'm just mindful of time. But I just wanted to give you a sense of, under gender and climate change, there's a lot of work that has to happen on leadership and employment. For example, I've spent the last 7 years working in Ethiopia with the Ethiopia Electric Utility, which has about 18,000 members. And I've been working on a $10 million gender and energy program with the World Bank. And we have been working on ensuring that there are more female engineers doing technical work at the substation level. So you'll see 2 operation technicians, this is Kilawit, in the Asrat region. And so she's been in her position for about 11 years, making the workplace more respectful and, cognizant of the career pathways of women versus men, for example. We've built childcare facilities. We've put in place upskilling and scholarship programs. So this is work I've done not with Distill Inclusion, but with my other hat, working as a consultant with the World Bank, but previously as staff. So if we can move to the next slide. Great. On women's entrepreneurship, there's a lot that can be done in the climate change and energy space. For example, impact funds are providing, financing to investees. These are often companies that work on climate technologies or energy technologies, and then they provide, products such as, water pumps or biogas digesters, and that often has to come with financing. But the financing isn't tailored to women's realities as customers and as entrepreneurs. So we are spending a lot of time working with companies and investors to think about this mindfully, and really make sure that those products are bought. I mean, often they're $800 to $1,000. That's a lot of money for women who we know are already making less, might be making more cash crops. But the encouraging thing really is that, the World Bank data, for example, shows that women entrepreneurs across sub-Saharan Africa continue to earn lower profits than men, so 34% on average. But the encouraging part is that Africa is really a leader in terms of female entrepreneurship. There are some serious barriers being broken also in the renewable energy and climate change space. But the other day, someone asked me for some recommendations on leading, gender climate change leaders that are, women, and I had to scratch my brain. So, names weren't coming to me immediately. It's not to say that there aren't any, but again, that leadership piece is fundamental in that climate change conversation. If we can move to the next slide. So yeah, just to quickly, mention that we've done a lot of projects around this. So we've, built a business case and toolkit on financing for, women entrepreneurs in the last mile renewable energy markets. And that's work we've done with Energia and Get Invest. So there's links in the next slide. It's a completely free resource. It's an interactive toolkit for financial institutions, for investors, for renewable energy companies to think about tailoring their supply and demand dynamics and addressing ecosystem aspects. And that's kind of more for governments, right? Like default rates or, interest rates and how those really impact women's ability to get technologies into their hands. And again, this links to climate change, because if someone is using a diesel generator and they can switch to a solar system or a solar water pump, that really does change the energy trajectory for those sectors like energy and farming and agriculture. And we know that women are quite keen to do that. So we really need to think about the gender and energy and climate change elements of that. If we move to the next slide. So that's just a screen grab of the research behind that work. And then we've also done a lot of, on the employment piece, we've done a lot of work on engaging men to champion change. So this is a picture of the CEO of Vigenco in Malawi. And we designed a 4 to 5 day in-depth training with male engineers to think about their own bias, think about their own power and privilege. That was hard work, meaningful work, and unpacking, societal, institutional, individual, and household beliefs around gender equality. And again, these are often engineers that are working on renewables, they're managing talent, they also are fathers in their households, and this all links to, again, the gaps we see in STEM, and so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and that talent not rising, and then we don't see those leaders in the decision-making room. So it's all connected, unfortunately. If we can move to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a picture of a female entrepreneur in Lao PDR. This is a biomass stove. Sorry, it's a, what is this? It's a Mimimoto stove. Sorry, it's not a, And basically this provides you with a cleaner way to cook your food. And we were working on, reducing the amount of exposure to smoke and the risks associated with that, but particularly the time poverty aspect and the drudgery aspect and the care aspect with, preparing wood and preparing food. It was taking like a few hours a day out of women's lives, and these stoves accelerated, that process and provided them with a cleaner and less toxic environment. A typical burning cook stove emits 300 to 400 cigarettes worth of smoke an hour. So this really was, also impacting lifespan. But the message here is less about the technology maybe, but more about the design, the choices, and the voice of women in that process. If we can move to the next slide. And I think another very important part around all the work on gender and climate change is gender-based violence and respectful workplaces. And I see a disconnect on there being a lot of advocacy, but not a lot of practical work with institutions, right? We've got to think about women being disrespected politically in places where they can't speak up or they're not getting enough space on panels. That all is gender-based violence, aspects. It's about power, it's about privilege, it's about access. So we need to think about our workplaces and even our own organizations. Most places I work a lot on mining and mining sites, but every institution really struggles with these aspects and like practically breaking it down in terms of codes of conduct. Then when a case comes forward, how to handle that case, how to provide survivor care. So this is kind of a cross-cutting thing that really, and it's a huge area of work. I think that's the main message. There are really rich and interesting careers for people, but I would say shift that focus from that NGO space to the private sector and also the public sector, where there are big gaps in actually doing this work in a meaningful way. And it can be done in infrastructure, it can be done in climate change, and it needs to be done. Okay, if we can move to the next slide, and then I'm almost done. So I think for me, what's been so meaningful has been the people I get to work with. I think the people I work with are brilliant. They are working on some of the most important issues that their countries and citizens face, and I respect that immensely. So working with utilities or working with ministries. I like the colleagues I work with, and this is something also to pay attention with. If your values are not the same as the people around you, you're going to struggle day to day, right? So I like sitting there and thinking about, what's going on in Burundi and what are the challenges there, and, what are the political dynamics, or, even what do people like eating? So, that comes into then being able to travel and enjoy that kind of career. I like the complexity of the gender and climate change topic, but that might be very frustrating for some people. There are days when I think, I should just do something everyone loves, because not everyone loves people who work on gender. They really don't. So you have to be comfortable with people pushing back on the work or challenging one. And that's part of that conversation. It's not something, when we say build a factory or, let's do X, Y, and Z, there's maybe a bit more buy-in, but gender equality, it's about power, and you're challenging the power system. So yeah, those are just some of the things. If we can move to the next one, and then I'm done. These are just some things that I've come to realize, but they're just from my side, is that curiosity is a doing word. You will uncover more by doing, and then that curiosity will be sparked further. It's not really come through reading reports. It's often for me about going into the field. I was mentored by Awa Sek, a Senegalese energy specialist, for many years. She taught me how to get cash money into the hands of women in terms of delivering charcoal to markets, or getting them onto committees to make decisions about forestry management. I can't really fight against that. Yeah, get into the field and speak to people, rely on local experts and treat them as equals. There's a huge there's a huge decolonization and kind of like equity and equality thinking going on in the development sector, but it still has a long way to go. And we need to watch how people are treated from different countries and contexts, and power dynamics there, and who speaks in the room, and who decides on financing, and who does X, Y, and Z. So we're hoping in Distill Inclusion to be part of some of that change, and also reflect at all times about that as well, because everyone has their massive blind spots, and then it takes long time to get good at something. It really does. I still feel I'm at the beginning of the gender and climate change thinking and journey, and there's so much more I want to learn from experts in this room and globally. So just a word of encouragement that one thinks it's gonna be fast, but actually it takes a really, really long time and practice and mastery. But that doesn't mean one should stand on the sidelines. There's a lot one can contribute at every stage. Yeah, that's it for me. So happy to look at the chat and answer any questions. But thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation, and seeing so many insights from different parts of the world. I feel like we can literally see what's going on in every sector, especially as regards to gender equality. And this slide is so rich. Thank you so much for the presentation, Inka. I'm so grateful that you had this prepared for us. I see some questions in the chat box. Let me start from the first one, because I took notes of that one before other questions came flooding in. So the first question was, how does climate change affect women? Like the practical examples on how climate change affects women. Maybe after you respond, I'll then share the next question. Thank you so much.
So how does climate change induce gender-based violence in sub-Saharan Africa? Is that the question?
Oh, it just generally mentioned, how does climate change affect women? This is a question from Enoch.
Yeah, it's on all fronts, right? It's from for example, we know that predominantly in Africa, women have agricultural-based livelihoods, right? So in East Africa, we're seeing huge droughts or, locust plagues or, crop failures based on those, extreme hazards or weather events, right? So you're going to have different outcomes in livelihoods and income based directly on that, right? And then because there's different vulnerability in terms of the kinds of drought-resistant crops that women might have had access to or not, or how much cold storage they have. If the roads are flooded, how long can women sit with their milk or with their eggs or their crop, right? So you've got to think about the impact of that hazard. You've got to think about the exposure. Are you in that area? Are the roads or the transport options around you affected? And then at the same time, the underlying vulnerability. And there, as I've mentioned, we know that women are less likely to have formalized employment. They're more likely to be free labor in agriculture. They are less likely to own land. When they purchase technologies, that's often more debated in the household, whether they should be able to make those kind of big investments. Is it not better to prioritize, the activities of other household members? So it's very hard for women to rise. And as we see more of those, and I'm talking about, a more rural kind of context in my example, and as climate change becomes worse, you're going to see a frequency and an increase in that vulnerability. And there's, I encourage you to look at the IPCC reports. They have a lot on gender and climate change, but then they have a lot on, from a scientific perspective, they have a complete assessment of Africa and the different regions and the hazards and the vulnerability and the exposure. So I will not do it justice. It's really for you to dive in, and if that interests you, there's so much, but there's still more that needs to be done in terms of a data and specificity, right? Like it really is, it needs to, all of this work needs more data work and more thinking. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah, that was really spot on. So the next question is more like on the community perspective. So many sustainable practices rely on community involvement. How do you think we should empower women to be active participants in climate action initiatives within their communities?
Yeah. So this is a complex question. It gets thrown around a lot in development, but it actually doesn't happen very often. It really doesn't. There'll be at minimum kind of a consultation and like a group discussion, but you need, this is so complicated. I think you need to first of all figure out exactly what the community dynamics are, who the gatekeepers are. You need to do the slow work of getting them on your side. I mean, the gatekeepers are predominantly men. You need to really ensure that this is a locally led process. That this is a change that they see as meaningful, because if this is pushed on them, it's really going to be rejected or undermined. This can even happen from women in a community. But for example, a small thing that I learned from our SECO I mentioned was based in Senegal, is that she looked at what it took to get onto leadership committees at a rural level for forestry management. And she realized that women had to write a paragraph of French. So she started training the women on how to write a paragraph in French. And this was a colonial hangover, right? Because it's Wolof and other languages there. And so she managed to get them the capacity and the literacy levels that they could become part of these forestry management committees. And when you're on those committees, you can also make choices on how to sustainably manage those forests, which has carbon impacts, etc. And then from the donor perspective or the fund perspective, make sure you actually have gender specialists from the country, from the region. You put money behind it and you put indicators and you actually implement it. You don't just say it up front, make a big announcement and then disappear. You have to do the 5 or 7 years of actually doing the work on the ground to make it happen. Because otherwise the community has said, okay, we're going to do this. Young girls might be excited about the change that's happening or the potential projects or involvement, and even young men, and then it disappears. You need money to make this happen. So yeah, hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I think just to round up, because I know that Ms. Hannah is already here. This question, I think it's more like on the research perspective. And I think you can also share with us, because I know you referenced some of this data and statistics and some of this research during your presentation. That's like involving gender-based violence in sub-Saharan Africa, and also in the areas of resource scarcity and climate-induced displacement. Are there relevant places where we can get through to get some of these resources and data?
Yeah, I'll share a toolkit that I've just developed for the private sector on gender-based violence and infrastructure. There are many levels, right? There's the government level, there's institutions that work on climate change. So they internally have a footprint of staff and employees. Then there's kind of contractors, and we send contractors into communities to build infrastructure, roads, or all the things that add up to sectors that are important for climate change. And we really haven't built a culture of looking at the drivers of gender-based violence, right? So, for example, I worked on a transport project in Uganda, and there were cases of gender-based violence with foreign contractors coming in, and they were vulnerable, girls, and there was an interface with local laborers. So it really is a very practical topic that's often not recognized and looked at in the infrastructure and climate change sector. And I'm not even talking about, the after effect. For example, we know that there's a lot more human trafficking, or a lot more, sexual exploitation and abuse after a major weather event. So we need to be thinking about both the institutions that are doing the work on climate change, but we also need to be thinking about the communities and their recovery from climate hazards, and that vulnerability piece, where the biggest driver of gender-based violence is gender inequality. So the main message is, if we keep working on gender equality, we also actually touch on the gender-based violence piece, but it does need specific skills and practitioners to be looking at those issues, because they're quite complex, depending if it's child abuse or other pieces of work. But it is linked to climate change fundamentally. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. We are already journeyed out of time, and I see a hand, but I would really, really appreciate it, Patricia, if you can share your question in the chat box. And I think Inka will take it from the chat box so that we can go ahead to introduce the next speaker. I truly hope you understand. Thank you so much, Inka. I already see everyone saying, sharing their thanks. It was such an insightful section. Thank you so much. And if you have other questions for Inka, please just share it on the chat box, and she'll reach out. And thank you so much also for the toolkits that you had mentioned. We'll try to get that across to everyone that is interested to look at that. And with that, I would want to introduce our next speaker, who is going to be giving us a speed talk. And I'm so excited about this section, because as a woman, we always want ways to keep empowering ourselves. And it is true, women empower women. And listening from an exceptional woman, I hope that you would also be inspired as I would. And with a warm welcome, I'll just say a little bit about her bio, and then she will take it up from there. Please permit me to share my slide. Yes. Okay. All right. This is just a little bit about Hannah. So this will not be everything, and she's going to be telling us a bit more. Hannah is the Gender and Youth Associate for the NDC Partnership. She works to support countries in advancing gender equality and meaningful youth engagement throughout the NDC process. Her work focuses on driving support through progress on the partnerships, gender strategy, and youth engagement. Prior to joining the NDC partnership, Hannah worked as an energy and gender specialist at Sustainable Energy for All, supporting energy access and gender initiatives to achieve Sustainable Development Goal 7. Previously, she served as the program coordinator for the Energy Access Project at Duke University and the Sustainable Energy Transition Initiative, and has worked with numerous, and I work with women-led renewable energy enterprises in Nepal. Hannah holds a Master's of Environmental Management from Duke University with an emphasis on international development and sustainable energy. She received her Bachelor of Arts in International Studies and Political Science from Loyola University, Chicago. With a round of emojis and applause, please make welcome Ms. Hannah for her speed talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I will echo Inka's sentiment of blushing with the full bio read, but so happy to be here with everyone today. I've worked with Inka in previous roles, most specifically during my time at SE for All. So I'm really happy to see kind of the bridge of the speakers and looking forward to the next presentation as well. It was mentioned that this was a speed talk, so I'm going to go through some points quickly, but I'm really happy to answer questions in the chat or if there's time later. So as was mentioned, my name is Hannah Gerardo. I'm based in Washington, DC at the moment, working with the NDC partnership, which the NDC partnership brings together more than 200 members. So it's very much this larger collective. And that includes 120 countries, developing and developed, and more than 80 institutions. So this creates, a mechanism, a partnership to deliver on ambitious climate action and help achieve the Paris Agreement as well as sustainable development goals. Our support model is really built on country-driven requests that are then supported by institutions and partners with kind of cross-cutting themes such as gender equality, youth engagement, but we also have colleagues working on things like financing of the NDCs, which I can talk about a little bit in a second. So my focus is around gender equality and youth engagement, building and supporting frameworks to strengthen whole of society approaches and inclusion as countries are thinking through their NDC implementation. I'm not sure how familiar folks are on this call with the NDCs. I can give a really quick overview, but there's lots of learnings and resources online to dig in further. But these are a core element of the Paris Agreement. They are the kind of physical representation of the efforts of each country to mitigate their national emissions, as well as adapt to the impacts of climate change. And they renew these every 5 years. We're looking at 2025 for the next review. So this is very much kind of an ongoing process. Inka did such a fantastic job talking about why gender is so critical to consider in these plans that governments are making. But I think especially around the NDCs, these are really important core documents that are agreed upon at a national level by many levels of government. And so to have gender equality, social inclusion aspects in these documents that look at inequalities is really so critical to make sure that all of the actions taken to fulfill climate commitments across sectors, across society, across kind of economic areas are considering the social impacts of all of those actions. So looking a little bit more at the NDCs, I'm also going to try and add links to the chat as we go, because I think there's quite a few great resources from partners and that we've been able to generate. We worked really closely with IUCN to, let's see if I can add links while I speak, to take a look at take a look at the last round of NDCs. So these were submitted around 2020, some came in around 2021, to look at how these documents consider gender needs and existing inequalities. And I think the happy answer is that there's more and more effort being put into bringing women, bringing gender equality issues into NDCs in this last round. However, this was very varied by region, by kind of the tier of consideration as well. Gender was most frequently seen in adaptation sections, less so in mitigation. So I think an interesting link to discussions around the energy sector. Mentions of kind of gender equality and meeting inequalities around kind of participation of women and men were most often included at a high level. So not very specific kind of phrasing, a very high level commitment that doesn't really translate into the meat of the documents. So one area to strengthen these that we're kind of looking at in the next couple of years is around bringing these commitments into sector specific plans. And I think that gets a little bit to Jonathan's question in the chat, tailoring outreach and education to kind of the specific needs of the sector, bringing these discussions to, I mean, talking to the Ministry of Energy is not necessarily like local level, but bringing it down from a national level as well to ensure that people are brought into the solutions aspect. Yeah, fantastic. And looking at where immediate needs are, that can be kind of a policy level or project by project basis. So long story short, they're getting better, but there's still a lot of work to be done to help these documents be gender responsive. Another really important aspect of NDC partnerships work is to support countries to implement their NDCs. So I think we've all probably have experience with that, you know, a nice document and a nice thing on paper, but actually getting these policies implemented in projects and activities is another story. Back to Inka's point about the financing. So we support countries to draft and carry through implementation plans. They're called a variety of different things, but the way we think about gender equality within those plans kind of hits across 5 key topics or tools, you could say. And the first one is gender analysis. So making sure that these plans are informed by data analyses that really look hopefully deeply into dynamics, processes, the people working in sectors, and really taking stock of how this work will impact and has impacted people in that topic as defined by the analysis. We talk a lot about including gender stakeholders as well. So making sure that people are brought into planning across the board. That could be kind of a local women's CSO, you know, women in fishery cooperatives, but it could also mean the Ministry of Gender is included in national level workshops to kind of develop and make these policies. We talk a lot about gender data and the collection of gender indicators, sex disaggregated data. This is actually really difficult to do, and there are organizations working with national statistics agencies on how to strengthen this. But it's really important that at the very least, we're trying to measure the outcomes of actions for people so that we can have a better understanding of how we might be perpetuating existing inequalities or filling some of those gaps that already existed. We talk a lot about, on the kind of flip side of that is monitoring and evaluation. So using that data, coming back, evaluating how these actions, policies might have impacted sectors and people. And then lastly, budgeting and finance is everything. So ensuring that implementation actions that look at gender are focused around gender or might have an outcome that impacts gender equality has money assigned to it. So it's not just this high level, it would be nice to have this, but none of our actual project lines address this. So we're trying to kind of close that gap a bit as well. And just a quick note on kind of some of the support that the NDC partnership can and is providing to our members. So a lot of what I've said so far is very kind of abstract. We are currently working with a handful of countries on gender equality specifically. Let me throw some of these blogs in the chat as well. Just examples of countries that are working very hard to make this a priority and establish their commitments. We have Panama, who is currently implementing their national gender and climate change plan. I'm really excited about a project that we're starting now in the Republic of Marshall Islands to help train solar technicians, predominantly women, in the outer islands to be able to repair and replace home solar systems that have gone kind of defunct after years of not really having a technician on that island or in that small community. So that's a very exciting, smaller project, but really impactful for the people that will be involved. But then we also support folks like we have a gender advisor that's embedded in the Ministry of Environment in Ecuador, whose responsibility it is to kind of carry out these gender commitments and do the mainstreaming work to make sure that Ecuador is fulfilling the goals that they've set out. So I noted the importance of the NDCs and the updates that are really kicking off right now for 2025. Countries are thinking through how they're going to enhance their commitments, raise their ambition around mitigating emissions, but also I think, especially right now, countries are thinking about planning for the just transition across economies. Going back to Inka's comment about the business case, kind of why this matters, at the NDC partnership, we often talk about a whole of society approach. This is not just kind of a nice thing to have, but as climate change impacts everyone, it's really critical that all people are involved in sharing solutions and shaping these solutions. So we've just released a best practice brief around stakeholder engagement and inclusive stakeholder engagement. There's a lot there, but I think it might be interesting to some of you just to see how we're really trying to encourage our members to take a very thoughtful, considerate approach in the update of these next NDCs. And this doesn't just include kind of gender issues, but thinking through especially youth engagement, thinking through how you're bringing in the private sector, different stakeholders within sectors as well. Okay, I'm probably running out of time, but I just want to highlight that it's a really important time to get engaged, and I think don't necessarily have the immediate next steps for you, but I'm sure everyone in the chat I think has already shared some of their organizations. But we are really kind of doubling down on support that we're offering to countries this year to enhance their processes to bring young people into the NDC update process. And echoing something that Inka said already, it's important that this isn't just a one-off interaction, but that governments are at the national level and at subnational levels really developing these relationships to be able to hear from and learn from young people in their regions, because I think that's absolutely critical to making sure these policies make sense for the future generations. Happy to talk about my career if that's interesting to folks, but I just want to say too that I think I started out at least thinking about big systems like energy utilities in the United States, but was consistently asking myself questions about who this impacts, who is left behind, who's going to be better off if this policy succeeds or worse off. And I think it's important to just acknowledge that there are so many entry points to doing this work, to promoting gender equality or inclusion in any way. And so one option that I'm doing now is working with countries and national policies to make sure this is kind of enshrined in the documents that really drive so much of the action. But there are so many other ways to dive into climate change and to make sure that people are acknowledged in some of these priorities. So fully echoing that it takes a long time to get good at something. It was really refreshing to hear Inka share this as someone I admire in this space. But I think putting yourself in positions to keep learning and keeping an open mind is really critical to being creative, thinking around these really monumental, huge challenges that need creative solutions and need everyone to kind of be working on them. Okay, I will stop there. I hope I kept to my time.
I didn't know I was muted. Thank you so much. Oh my God, thank you so much for the section and how you progress from the countries to the people. It's just so nice to see everything coming into place. And I also like I asked in the chat box because you talked about next steps. So if you're a woman focused organization that is interested in like maybe places to get finances, there are some resources that have been shared by both speakers, and there's one particularly shared by Inka on the chat box. Please just go through that and see how you can utilize that. And thank you so much. I hope you do stay till the end of the section so that thank you so much. So anyone that has a question for the panelists, let's just listen to every one of them. And at the end, you can feel free to send your questions in the chat box. I would love to introduce our third speaker for the day. And she is going to be rounding out the section, but with insights from the, should I say, it's not the non-governmental organization space, but it's going to be a broad educational exposition. So I'm very excited and I'm honored to be welcoming our third speaker, and that's Ms. Adenike Abimbola. Let me pull up her bio and read to you. Such amazing bios, such amazing personalities. We can all see how evident their hard work, the hard work that they've put into the sector. You can see it from their career progression, and I'm so excited to be here with them. And this is a little bit about Ms. Adenike, and she's going to tell us more about herself and her work. Adenike Abimbola is a senior assistant in research and data at the Nigeria Energy Transition Office. In this capacity, she leverages her expertise in research, stakeholder coordination, and project management to drive the objectives of clean cooking and emerging programs. She has also supported SE for All, gender and youth theme, in the planning and execution of capacity building programs, such as the STEM technical training program and the development of knowledge products. Adenike holds a bachelor's degree in geological sciences from the University of Leeds, that's in the UK, and a master's degree in renewable energy systems technology from, okay, I need help with this university.
Loughborough University.
Thank you so much for coming through. With a round of applause and our sparkling emojis, please make welcome Ms. Adenike. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shalom, and hello, everyone. It's a bit daunting following our first two speakers, but I'm really honored to be one of the speakers here. And thank you so much to Shalom and Renewable Technologies for organizing such impactful series. And before I go into my presentation, maybe I'll just speak a little bit more on my career path or journey so far. So as Shalom read out, I actually have an undergrad in geological sciences. So I kind of started out my career in the energy sector in like the oil and gas or with an ambition to be in the oil and gas sector. But through one of my modules in university, actually a climate module, I kind of gained like an awareness of the importance of, or the climate change challenge, and then made a transition to a career in the renewable energy sector. So I currently work at Sustainable Energy for All as a senior assistant in research and data in the Nigeria Energy Transition Office. But before that, I work for the broader SE for All team, clean cooking teams and gender and youth teams. So, and then on the gender and youth side, I was really working on the developing of capacity building programs. So the STEM technical training program, which is working on giving women in Africa, now expanding into Asia, opportunities to gain skills in like solar installation, and other energy related skills, so that you can prime them to become the next set of energy leaders in their respective countries. So that has been done in Sierra Leone, Ghana, and Kenya, and it's now being expanded to Panama and hopefully Nigeria very soon. So yeah, so my presentation today will like kind of touch on some of the things that have already been spoken about by Inka and Hannah. So mainly climate adaptation, mitigation, touch on the gender disparities in the energy sector, as well as opportunities in capacity building and skills that young professionals should have or should be looking at developing from somebody who's also pretty early in their career journey as well. So to start with, as we all know, we can move to the next slide now. As we all know, climate change presents a pressing global challenge. It hasn't moved on my end, so I hope my internet is not going to cause any issues, but please let me know if I ever cut out. So yeah, climate change presents, actually, maybe I can just put off my video to conserve bandwidth. Okay, so as I was saying, climate change presents a pressing global challenge and exacerbates vulnerabilities, especially amongst women. And I'll just keep talking until that's up.
That's not. Is it up now?
It's loading, yeah. Okay, great. Yes, so as I was saying, climate change presents a pressing global challenge and exacerbates vulnerabilities, especially amongst women. So it presents, like I said, a myriad of challenges affecting women. So we see 55% higher illiteracy rates amongst women than men, because of limited access to training or education opportunities, especially during climate events, because women are burdened with like a duty of care to the households. There's also 80% of people being displaced during climate events being women, as well as their livelihoods being affected during climate events because they're more involved in agriculture. And to move the needle in tackling these challenges, there's several things that we can do to mitigate these challenges. So there's creating access to education, so providing women with vocational training, skills development programs, and the likes. And statistics actually show that women who receive information on climate adaptation or mitigation strategies are more likely than men to adopt these strategies, which has a secondary impact of empowering them and empowering their communities as well. Then there's financial inclusion, so improving women's access to financial services, credit, also improving women's access to securing land and property rights can enhance their ability to manage natural resources sustainably and reduce vulnerability to climate-related displacements and conflicts. And then lastly, political participation, empowering women to participate in decision-making processes in their communities at national and international levels can ensure that their voices are heard and priorities are integrated into policies and programs. And all of these can empower women to contribute significantly to achieving climate goals and sustainable development goals. So here I've just put a couple of sustainable development goals that women empowerment can lead to the achievement of. So 1, 2, 3, 5, there's also 7. So this list is not exhaustive. So on to the next slide, please. So as Inka kind of alluded to, energy is like a big contributor to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, and we've made lots of progress in setting the agenda for an accelerated transition to the use of renewable energy technologies. And so embedding these clean energy solutions in women's lives can really improve the quality of their lives, and as a result, increase their climate resilience and foster sustainable development in their communities. So I've put some examples here of how that can be done across agriculture, education, economic empowerment, and community resilience. So in agriculture, for example, providing them access to solar-powered crop drying systems, cold storage facilities, so that they can reduce post-harvest loss, increase food securities, and ultimately be able to access like a better market price when they're selling their goods or commodities in major markets or to major distributors or the likes. I'm also installing irrigation systems to help manage water scarcity during droughts as well. On the education side, providing access to solar-powered lighting systems in rural schools can extend study hours and improve learning outcomes, especially for girls, as well as solar-powered computer labs and internet connectivity as well. Then on the economic empowerment side, training women as solar panel installers, allowing them to enter the renewable energy workforce, supporting women-led enterprises by financing gender initiatives or women entrepreneurs. And I think clean cooking is a great sector where this can be done by giving them access to cleaner fuels such as biogas or briquettes to help them be able to enjoy the benefits essentially of cooking with less emissive fuels. And then lastly, on community resilience, by empowering women to become decision makers in their communities, the statistics show that projects where women are heavily involved in go on to become more successful. They're able to really drive the success of clean energy initiatives in their communities and manage resources efficiently. So on the next slide, I will talk about the role of women in climate action. And I'm so sorry, I hope you guys can see the text. I didn't realize it was going to be this small, but yeah, so empowering women gives, sorry, let me start again. So empowering communities involves leveraging the diverse roles of women in climate action efforts. So not just at the community scale, but also at like a national or global scale. Not just community women, but young professionals or decision makers, policy makers, and the likes. So women can contribute from a leadership or decision-making standpoint, like I said, to drive policies and programs, gender responsive climate policies and programs that prioritize women's participation, are more effective in achieving sustainable outcomes. And so, for example, projects that provide women with access to clean energy solutions can improve health outcomes, reduce poverty, and mitigate climate change. And one of these boxes here shows like the statistical impact that when women are involved in decision-making processes, projects are more likely to succeed, as I think I mentioned before, and I wanted to drive that home as well with another point on that. But unfortunately, due to existing bias and gender disparities, there's still limited participation of women in the energy sector. And so the next slide kind of talks through that, the disparities or biases that women have to face. Yes, so like I said, despite the critical role of women in the climate action agendas, there's disparities that persist and limits women's participation and leadership opportunities. So like I said, they're underrepresented in leadership roles. According to IRENA, women only hold 32% of senior management positions in the renewable energy sector, and they're mostly they mostly play administrative roles in the energy industry. There's also limited access to opportunities. So because of limited access to education, training, as education for women is seen as more of a luxury, so not something that at least rural women can really participate in because they're expected to take care of the family. As a result, women have limited access to training opportunities, career advancement opportunities, and even then they also have to face stereotypes or biases in their leadership or technical roles. Then there's the gender pay gap as well. So even when these women have the qualities, there's unfortunately their skills or their contributions are undervalued in the energy sector compared to their male counterparts. And lastly, a lack of role models and mentors. So there's an absence of there's more of an absence of visible female role models and mentors in the climate and energy sector, and that further hinders women's participation or progress and aspirations in the energy sector. However, I think that's something that advocacy data is now trying to shift the needle on. So we're increasingly seeing more women's participation. There's the gender equality agenda is I think it's becoming more prominent, especially on a global scale as well. So we're seeing action on that. But in the next few slides, I kind of wanted to talk through the future opportunities for women or just youth in general. So I kind of spoke about how there's these disparities in the energy sector. There's 2% of women participate in senior and leadership roles. However, So organizations such as IRENA, actually with the renewable energy jobs reports, emphasizes that there are going to be more renewable energy jobs being created as we move forward in the energy transition agenda. The report highlighted 13.7 million jobs in 2022, although a lot of those are in China. But I really just wanted to highlight that there are increasing opportunities for youth and for women, for young women, most especially, to participate. And so these are some of the emerging job roles and skills that I think we can all, or we should all be tapping into. So the increasing jobs in renewable energy, some of the emerging job roles are solar PV technicians, as well as wind turbine technicians, energy analysts, project managers, and finance specialists. And some key skills would be analytical skills, problem solving skills, project management, communication, and the likes. And so the last slide talks about some capacity building programs at the intersection of climate and energy. I didn't want to speak too much about sustainable energy for all here, but I will kind of highlight the STEM technical training program, which, like I said, is aimed at giving young women in their early careers, so 1 to 2 years after graduation, opportunities to learn skills such as solar PV installation, to also shadow some of the SE for All in-country teams and initiatives. So we're really trying to give women, especially in, I'll say, opportunities that can give them the skills to access the jobs that are being created in the renewable energy sector. And there's also the Women in Clean Cooking program, the Open Africa Power program. This is open to, I believe, women as well. And this is by NL Foundation. There's also Student Energy Career training program. And then for those who are interested in energy modeling, the Joint Summer School on modeling tools as well. And I also put a couple climate sector capacity building programs as well. So with this, I just really wanted to highlight the need for us as young professionals to seek these capacity building programs. I know a lot of them are quite competitive because there's a lot of us trying to access these opportunities, but also trying to continue to strive for better, to learn more, especially technical skills that can position us to be able to access these opportunities, men and women, so we can advocate or speak for, take action to really help these underserved and marginalized communities. So yeah, with that, I'll just end there, and I'm happy to take any questions from the chat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love the fact that you ended with this initiative, because we have some of the participants of SE for All program, like the one in Sierra Leone. There's Florence here, who was also a part of that initiative. And yes, I've been following up on the STEM technical training programs, and I'm so excited that it's finally coming to Nigeria. Thank you so much, Adenike. Let me look through the chat box if there is any specific question. Okay, since I can't find one for now. Any other question? I remember Patricia raising up her hand at the beginning. Maybe we can take the question now. Oh, yes, please, let's give a round of applause to our amazing speakers for today. The section was completely enlightening, and I'm so glad that we are almost coming to the end of the presentations today. And I also wanted to ask if the slides could be shared with the participants. Maybe we can always discuss all about that later on after the presentation. Oh, thank you so much. Any further questions or questions we didn't take earlier, please, you can feel free to signify maybe a chat, a raise of hand, or you can drop the questions in the chat box. Okay, this is a message from Mr. Excel. So he's asking, he's currently researching renewable energy transition and non-economic loss and damage in Nigeria at the Department of Development Studies, SOAS, at the University of London. He's asking if he can reach out to you for an interview, which will inform the research. Mr. Excel, can you explain a bit about the research? I think that would really help to clarify.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you to the amazing speakers. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so our research it's on renewable energy transition and non-economic loss and damage. That is the often intangible impact of renewable energy transition in Africa. So we're using Nigeria as a case study to look at renewable energy projects, the policy documents and all, and see how it might be affecting the local communities. So we'll be taking the perspective of policy experts and professionals in the space, and we would want to reach out to Ms. Adenike if she would want to act as one of our participants.
Yeah, thank you so much, Excel. Yeah, I'll be happy to speak further on this and see how I can contribute.
Okay, maybe can I share with him your email address possibly to facilitate
Yes.
that?
Yeah, that's fine. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much. This is a question from Leah, and I'd ask it to all to all speakers. So she's saying that she's currently an undergraduate student in one of the STEM disciplines, and she's asking if there are any organizations for her to participate or be a part of as an undergraduate. Maybe Miss Adenike can take up then. Okay, Miss Inka is already saying something. Adenike, then Hannah can also say something about it. Oh, yeah. Okay.
I actually can't think of anything as an undergraduate, although I think Inka has put a response in the comment box. Nothing comes to mind at the moment, but if something does before the end of the call, I'll just put that in the chat box.
Okay. Hannah suggested student energy. Yeah. I was also a part of the Student Energy Fellowship and also the career training. Inka is asking, Leah, you can just go on the chat box to respond to that message on your focus in STEM. And speaking on mentorship and how young women can have career experts that they can look up to, I was going to ask if there are any of you that know, about internship opportunities or mentoring programs that young women can be a part of. Okay. And I can pass that question to Adenike and then Hannah can say, okay. Oh, Jeanette for mentorship. Okay.
I was going to mention that yeah, so the Women in Clean Cooking program, for example, it connects you, that's powered by GWNet. They connect you to a mentor. I think it's for a program, for a 1-year program, if I'm not mistaken. So that's in Clean Cooking. But I know they do a couple of other mentorship programs. So yeah, I think GWNet is a good suggestion.
Okay. I would also add that for renewable technologies, we also work with people at the undergraduate level. So we currently have an initiative that is going on, and some of our energy educators are from undergraduate level, from our early career professionals. So we can always interact more on how we can facilitate such kind of collaborations in your university as well. So please reach out to us. I'll drop my email once again in the chat box in case for anyone that wants to reach out to us at Renewworks. I think we are the closest to get access to. And I also wanted to mention She Changes Climate. They also offer a mentoring program as well. Patricia, are you still there? Maybe you can ask your question directly now.
Oh, hi, Shalom. It wasn't actually a question. I don't know if I can be heard. I wanted to make a contribution to the community, how to engage the community question that was asked earlier, which Inka answered. I just wanted to, yeah, I wanted to add on to how I mean, my organization does our community and be able to engage the women in the community, especially to shift to renewable energy, and that's that of the clean cooking technologies. So if it's okay to share, then I'll just go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking that it was for our panelists since they're already here to answer any question. But you could share in the chat box so that anyone that needs this information can just readily take it from the chat box. If there
thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Any further questions? I saw someone unmute themselves earlier. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I think I'll also let the chats remain open. And if there's anyone that still wants to engage in the chat box, please go ahead to engage. I'll still be here for a while. And if you want to talk to us for more opportunities within Renewworks, I'm also going to be here, but I just wanted to say thank you to our panelists. I'm so glad we kept to time. This is 10:38 and our program was planned to end by 10:40. And I'm so grateful that we all took out the time to be here. Thank you so much, Inka. Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you so much, Adenike. It was a pleasure having you, and I'm looking forward to further collaborations, because one thing I noticed that was very pivotal to all the conversations we had here, everyone was mentioned solar training for women, solar training for girls, solar training for young people. And that's what us at Renewable Technologies, we're trying to accelerate in River State, Nigeria. So I think I would also send a message across if there are any ways for collaborations to happen and partnerships for future work. And okay, to end the call, I want to ask us to turn on our cameras to take a quick photo to commemorate this section. And just to say happy International Women's Day to all the women out there once again. Okay. Oh, such amazing faces. Oh, hello. And some of our energy educators are here as well. I see them here. I see Cynthia is here. I see Nenda. Thank you so much for joining. If you are in a comfortable place, please turn on your camera so that we can take a quick photo. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for making out of time. Okay, I'll be taking the photo And we can all say Happy International Women's Day to everyone. On the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Inka. Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Adenike. And this is the end of the section. And we'll send the recording will be prepared immediately after the section. So we'll upload it to our YouTube channel and it to be sent across to everyone that has registered on this call. And if you want to talk with us further, we are here and I'll be here for 5 minutes thereabouts. So please feel free to hang around. Oh, hi, Enoch. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Florence, for joining. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Israel. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Cynthia. Oh, yeah, right. Don't worry, we would have a section for guys too. What should we talk about when we have the section for guys? Men's empowerment.
Yeah, I think we could have a session about men, how climate change affects men. Because all these conversations about women, we also need a little bit of empowerment. So yeah.
I mean, the empowerment schemes are all out there. They're all out there. There are many times when we see opportunities open to both men and female, but we find out that they choose to select the male guys, like they choose to select the men and leave the females out of it, especially in engineering careers. So why do people need more empowerment? You already have empowerment.
Okay, we'll have that conversation.
Shalom, I think we should have that session for men rather for to encourage them to support and push women who are struggling to be in that space instead, so that we change the mindset.
You see, she has gone back to talking about women again. No, we are not biased. The thing is, right? Okay, I see what Patricia is talking about. And yeah, she does a lot of grassroots mobilization, and we're also thinking of ways to collaborate. I know I've said this several times, but I know that one way or the other we'll find our busy schedules to coincide. And she does a lot of this for women at the grassroots level, and that's why I like her initiative, but like include clean cooking and the renewable energy. And it's also similar to what we do at Renewable, just that we focus more on solar energy. So the thing is, there are programs for men, and yes, we want to encourage everybody. Me, I'm an equal opportunity person. I want people to feel empowered both ways, both male and female. So that's why our trainings are not specific to female. It's everybody come in. The same thing with our initiative, like the Renew Volunteer Initiative we started. It's for everybody. But what happened? How many males turned up for such kind of roles, and how many females turned out? So you still find out that the gap is still there. So it's inevitable. It's always clear when you see like the participation from men. They're always enthusiastic about such kind of things, but the females are always maybe like lingering a little bit. And that's why we are trying to encourage everyone the same. But you're already doing amazing work in your university. So we're looking forward to how you will empower more men, because I want to see maybe if you give us inspiration on how to do it. Our next session will center on men empowerment. I know Jonathan wants to say something. He has been shaking on his seat since to say something for men.
Yeah, let him say something.
I don't really have much of a thing to say. Anyways, it's just, I think to spice in the whole thing, and for us to give out our own idea from the men's perspective. I think that will go a long way. And according to if I'm to counter what you said earlier, you said something about in the engineering sector where they choose men now. I think most times I've been able to go through certain requirements, and I'm seeing females. If you're a lady, ladies are how they put it, more like it's more advantageous as a lady